He sold over 1 billion records, more than anyone. His voice is one of the most famous sounds in human history. We have thousands of his recordings. Studio takes, live shows, home demos, rehearsals. You would think we have it all. But we don't. Not even close. For every polished master take, there are ghosts. Tapes that were erased. Acetates that were lost. Recordings that people swear exist, but have never been found. What if the most important recording he ever made is still out there? What if a forgotten tape in a dusty attic could change how we see the king of rock and roll? These are not just missing songs. They are missing pieces of a life. They are questions without answers. Number 16, what was on the very first record Elvis ever made? We all know the story, or we think we do. In the summer of 1953, an 18-year-old truck driver named Elvis Presley walked into the Memphis recording service. It was a side business of Sun Records, run by Sam Phillips. For a few dollars, anyone could record a two-sided acetate disc. Elvis paid his money. He recorded My Happiness on one side. He recorded That's When Your Heartaches Begin on the other. He said it was a gift for his mother, Gladys. This acetate, the holy grail of rock and roll, was found years later. It was sold at auction in 2015 for $300,000. It is the beginning of the story. But what if it isn't? Marion Keisker was Sam Phillips' assistant. She was the one behind the desk that day. She was the first person in the music business to ever hear Elvis Presley sing. Her memory of that day has become legend. She is the one who asked him, "Who do you sound like?" He replied, "I don't sound like nobody." She's the one who secretly kept the tape rolling on him, jotting down a note, "Good ballad singer, hold." But Keisker also hinted at something more. In interviews over the years, she sometimes suggested that My Happiness wasn't his first attempt. She recalled him fumbling through another song first. He was nervous, he couldn't quite get it right. So they stopped, and he tried again with My Happiness. This isn't just a minor detail. It changes everything. If he recorded something else first, what was it? Was it another Ink Spots ballad? A Dean Martin song? A country tune he heard on the radio? And what happened to that recording? Acetates were expensive in 1953. A small studio like Sun would not waste them. The most likely scenario if this first attempt happened is that Sam or Marion simply recorded My Happiness over the failed take. The original performance would be gone forever, a layer of sound buried under a more famous one. But there is another possibility. What if they used a separate disc? What if Elvis, unhappy with the first try, paid for a second one? It's unlikely for a kid on a truck driver's salary, but not impossible. The historian Peter Guralnick, in his definitive biography Last Train to Memphis, carefully reconstructs this day. He relies heavily on the accounts of Keisker and Sam Phillips. The official story remains the My Happiness acetate. But the seed of doubt planted by Keisker's memory persists among hardcore Elvis fans and collectors. They call it the zero acetate. The true first recording, if it exists, it would be priceless. More valuable than the known first acetate, it would be the sound of a young man, completely unknown, even before the moment we all thought was the beginning. It would be the sound of raw, unformed talent, a voice before it knew it was a voice. We are left with a mystery born from a single person's memory. Marion Keisker was there? She had no reason to invent such a detail. But memory is a funny thing. Over decades telling the same story, details can shift. Maybe she was conflating his nervousness with a failed take, or maybe she was remembering it exactly as it happened. That a piece of shellac somewhere holds the true first notes Elvis Presley ever recorded. It might be a broken shard in a landfill, it might be mislabeled in a box in someone's garage, or it might have been erased just moments after it was made. What if Marion Keisker's memory was perfect, and the zero acetate is real? If it was simply discarded, where would a Memphis recording studio have thrown its trash in 1953? Could a recording that was considered a failure then be the most significant musical artifact now? And if Sam Phillips did record over it, is there any technology, now or in the future, that could separate the two layers of sound and reveal the ghost underneath? At number 15, did Elvis and Johnny Cash record a gospel album together? The $1 Million Quartet is one of the most famous jam sessions in history. On December 4th, 1956, Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins, and Johnny Cash were all at Sun Studio in Memphis. A photographer was called. A reporter wrote a story. A tape machine was running for part of it. The recordings are legendary. They mostly feature Elvis and Jerry Lee Lewis on piano, singing gospel and country songs. Carl Perkins joins in, but Johnny Cash is barely audible. You can hear him talk a little between songs, but you can't really hear him sing. This has led to a lot of questions. Cash himself claimed in his autobiography that he was there, but he was singing in a higher harmony that the microphone didn't pick up well. He also said he was the first to arrive and the last to leave, but the tapes don't really support that. For years, fans have wondered why the Man in Black is so silent on the $1 million tapes. The answer might be even stranger than the question. According to some, Cash and Elvis recorded something else that day. Something that was lost. The theory comes from people who were there. Bob Johnson, a recording engineer, has claimed in interviews that a whole other session happened. He said that after the famous jam session, most people left, but Elvis and Johnny Cash stayed. And they recorded a full album's worth of gospel songs, just the two of them. Two of the biggest voices of the 20th century singing their favorite hymns. It sounds too good to be true. A duet album between the king of rock and roll and the Man in Black. Think about the context. Both men were deeply religious. They both grew up singing gospel music in church. It was the foundation of their sound. Elvis had already recorded gospel songs. Cash would go on to record many gospel albums. The idea of them bonding over this music is not just plausible, it's completely believable. Sam Phillips's studio was a casual place. Tapes were rolling all the time. It was a place for experiments. A late-night gospel session with his two biggest stars would have been a dream for Phillips. So where are the tapes? This is where the story gets murky. Johnson claimed the tapes were taken by Sam Phillips. Others have said they were taken by Jack Clement, another Sun engineer. Some believe they were given to Elvis or Cash as a personal keepsake. The most troubling theory is that they were recorded over. Tape was expensive. In-studios often reused tapes from sessions that weren't intended for commercial release. The thought that someone might have erased an Elvis Presley and Johnny Cash gospel album to record a lesser-known artist is painful for fans. The official line from RCA and the Elvis estate is that these tapes do not exist. There are no session logs, no paperwork, no catalog numbers, nothing but the stories of a few people who swear they were there. But these aren't just random fans. These are people who worked at Sun, people who were part of the scene. Their stories have been consistent for decades. Could they all be mistaken? Or are they telling the truth about a lost masterpiece? What if the tapes are not lost but hidden? Could they be sitting in a private collection owned by someone who doesn't know what they have? If Sam Phillips took them, what happened to them after he sold Sun Records and died? Is it possible that the entire story is a myth, a piece of rock and roll folklore that has grown over the years? Or is the simplest explanation the truth that two young men at the peak of their powers sang their hearts out to God one night in a small Memphis studio and someone forgot to save the tape? Number 14, what happened to the tapes from the USS Arizona benefit? On March 25th, 1961, Elvis Presley performed a concert at the Block Arena in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. This was not a normal concert. Elvis had just gotten out of the Army a year earlier. He had been focusing on his movie career. He hadn't performed a live show for years. This was a special one-off event. It was a benefit concert to raise money for the USS Arizona Memorial. The memorial was to be built over the sunken battleship, a tomb for the 177 crewmen who died during the attack on Pearl Harbor. The fundraising had stalled. Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, saw an opportunity. It was good publicity, and it was for a good cause. Elvis put on an incredible show. He was in top form. He wore his famous gold lame jacket. He sang all his big hits. Heartbreak, Hotel, Don't Be Cruel, Hound Dog. He also sang newer songs like It's Now or Never. The crowd of 5,000 people went wild. It was a historic performance. It was the last time Elvis would perform a full live concert for over 8 years, until his Las Vegas comeback in 1969. The concert was a huge success. It raised over $64,000 for the Memorial Fund, which was a huge amount of money in 1961. It pushed the fundraising over the top. The memorial was built. RCA Records was there. They recorded the entire show. They planned to release it as a live album. It would have been Elvis's first official live album. The sound quality was reportedly excellent. A professional, multi-track recording of one of his most important concerts. So where is it? The album was never released. The tapes vanished. The official story is that the recording was plagued by technical problems. That the sound was bad. But this is hard to believe. RCA was a major record label with experienced engineers. And there is evidence to the contrary. A bootleg of the concert has been circulating for decades. It was made from a poor quality audience recording. You can hear the crowd screaming. You can barely hear the music, but in 1980, RCA released an album called Elvis Presley, a box set that included a few tracks from the Arizona benefit. The sound on these tracks is fantastic, clear, powerful, professionally recorded. This proves that at least some of the master tapes survived and were in good condition. So what happened to the rest of them? Why was the full album scrapped? One theory involves Colonel Parker. The Colonel was notoriously controlling about Elvis's image and his product. Some believe that he didn't like the sound of the recording, or that he felt a live album would compete with the movie soundtracks Elvis was releasing at the time. He may have ordered RCA to shelve the project. Another theory is that the tapes were simply lost in the RCA vaults. The vaults were a massive archive. Tapes were mislabeled, misplaced, or even thrown out over the years. It's possible that the master tapes for the full concert are sitting in a can with the wrong label on it, undiscovered for over 60 years. The few songs that were released only make the mystery more frustrating. They show us what we are missing. A complete professional recording of Elvis in his prime at a historic and emotional event. It's a snapshot of a moment in time, a bridge between the rock and roll rebel of the 50s and the movie star of the 60s. The full concert recording would be a major historical document. Could the rest of the master tapes still be hidden in the Sony RCA archives, waiting for a diligent archivist to stumble upon them? Was there a specific reason Colonel Parker might have wanted this particular show suppressed beyond simple business strategy? Is it possible that the release tracks were the only ones that were salvageable, and the rest of the tapes were genuinely damaged beyond repair? Or did someone steal them from the vault decades ago? Number 13, where are the tapes from the 1966 gospel sessions? In May of 1966, Elvis went to RCA Studio B in Nashville. He was there to record a new gospel album. It would become How Great Thou Art, one of his most beloved albums and a Grammy winner. The sessions lasted for 4 days. Elvis was in a great mood. He loved singing gospel music more than anything else. He was surrounded by his favorite singers, the Jordanaires, and a new group called the Imperials. The atmosphere was relaxed and creative. They recorded the 12 songs for the album. They also recorded a few extra songs, and they jammed a lot. The official session logs, documented by Elvis expert Ernst Jorgensen in his book Elvis Presley, A Life in Music, show what was recorded for release. But they don't tell the whole story. The musicians and singers who were there remember things differently. They remember hours of tape rolling while Elvis led them through old gospel standards, hymns they all knew by heart. These were not meant for the album. This was just Elvis singing for the joy of it. He would start a song, and everyone would join in. The engineers, knowing Elvis's creative process, would let the tapes roll. According to members of the Imperials, like Jake Hess and Cheryl Nielsen, they recorded dozens of songs that were never released. Songs like Nearer My God to Thee, Just a Little Talk with Jesus, and many others. These were not rough demos. They were full-blown performances, with Elvis and the best gospel singers in the world harmonizing together. They were spontaneous, soulful, and powerful. They were the sound of Elvis in his element, free from the pressure of making a hit single or a movie soundtrack. So where are these recordings? The tapes from the How Great Thou Art sessions have been released in various forms over the years. RCA's Follow That Dream collector's label has put out deluxe editions with many outtakes and alternate versions of the album tracks. But the legendary jam sessions are missing. There is no trace of the dozens of extra gospel songs that the session players swear were recorded. One possibility is that the tapes were erased. As with many other lost recordings, the practice of reusing tape was common. An engineer might have seen a reel of tape labeled Gospel Jam and decided to use it for another artist's session, wiping out a priceless piece of music history in the process. Another theory is that the tapes were taken from the studio. Elvis often liked to take home rough mixes of his sessions. It's possible he took the tapes of the jam sessions for his own personal listening. If so, they could have been lost or misplaced at Graceland over the years. There is also a darker theory. Some believe that RCA or the Elvis estate has deliberately held these tapes back. Why? Perhaps they feel the quality is not good enough for commercial release. Or perhaps they are saving them for a future project. Fans have been clamoring for these recordings for years. The existence of these gospel jams is one of the most persistent and believable rumors in the world of Elvis collecting. The eyewitness accounts are too numerous and too consistent to be dismissed. What specific songs were sung during these jams, and could a complete track list ever be compiled from the memories of those who were there? If Elvis took the tapes to Graceland, could they be among the uncatalogued items still in the archives? Is it possible that a studio employee took a copy of the tapes home and they are now sitting in a private collection somewhere in Nashville? Or was this soulful private worship music deliberately erased because it was considered too personal and not commercial enough for the Elvis brand? Or number 12, did a fire in 1973 destroy a lost country album? In 1973, Elvis was recording at Stax Studio in Memphis. He was on a creative roll. His Aloha from Hawaii special had been a massive global success. He was ready to make new, serious music. He had a great band. He was working with producers from outside the usual RCA circle. The Stax sessions were productive. They resulted in 3 albums raised on rock, Good Times, and Promised Land. But there was supposed to be more. Elvis recorded a huge amount of material during these sessions in July and December of 1973. He cut country songs, rhythm and blues, rock and roll, and ballads. He was exploring different styles. According to some who were involved in the sessions, there was enough high-quality country material recorded to make a full dedicated country album. Elvis had always loved country music. It was one of his earliest influences. An album that focused purely on that genre, recorded with the raw, soulful feel of Stax, would have been incredible. The songs he did release from this period show the potential. Tracks like She Wears My Ring, There's a Honky Tonk Angel, and I've Got a Thing About You Baby were fantastic country performances. But the legend says there were others. Unreleased songs and alternate takes that were specifically intended for a country project. The producer of some of these sessions, Felton Jarvis, reportedly had a vision for a cohesive country album. Then disaster struck. In February 1974, a fire broke out at a private home in Nashville. It was the home of Tom Diskin, an executive with Colonel Tom Parker's management company. This house was being used to store some of Elvis's master tapes. The fire was severe. It destroyed a lot of material. The official reports at the time were vague about what was lost. But over the years, insiders have suggested that the unreleased country masters from the Stax sessions were among the tapes that burned. This story is controversial. RCA has never officially confirmed what specific tapes were lost in that fire. Some researchers, like those behind the Follow That Dream label, have worked hard to piece together the Stax sessions. They have released many outtakes, suggesting that most of the tapes did survive. But they haven't found a lost country album. This could mean one of two things. Either the album never existed as a concept and it's just a fan fantasy, or the core tapes that would have made up that album were indeed the ones that were in that house and are now gone forever. The idea of a fire destroying these recordings is horrifying. It's a permanent loss. Unlike a misplaced tape that could one day be found, a burned tape is ash. The music on it is silenced. The potential for a classic Elvis country album, a record that could have redefined his career in the mid-70s, might have literally gone up in smoke. We are left with the released Stax material, which is excellent, but it's scattered across different albums. We never got to hear the focused, complete artistic statement that Elvis and his producer may have intended. Was the concept of a dedicated country album just an idea discussed at the time, or were tapes actually compiled and edited for such a project before the fire? How many unreleased songs, not just alternate takes, were lost in that fire? Could copies of these tapes exist, perhaps rough mixes that Felton Jarvis or the musicians took home? Or is the story of the fire being used as a convenient explanation for why certain tapes can't be found, when in reality they might be lost for other, less dramatic reasons? Number 11. What's on the German home tapes we've never heard? From 1958 to 1960, Elvis was in the U.S. Army, stationed in Germany. He was away from the recording studio, away from Hollywood, away from his fans. But he didn't stop singing. He rented a large house in Bad Nauheim, where he lived with his father, his grandmother, and some of his Memphis friends. He bought a reel-to-reel tape recorder, and he made tapes. These are known as the German home recordings. A handful of these recordings have been released officially. They are very low fidelity. They sound like they were recorded in a living room, because they were. You can hear Elvis talking, laughing, playing the piano. He sings songs that he would never record professionally. Songs like I'll Take You Home Again, Kathleen, Like a Baby, and There's No Tomorrow, which he later adapted into It's Now or Never. They are intimate, personal, and fascinating. They are a window into Elvis's private world. But we only have a small fraction of what was recorded. People who were there, like his friend Lamar Fike, have said that Elvis recorded constantly. He would spend hours at the piano, singing whatever came into his head. He would try out new songs, experiment with different vocal styles, and sing old favorites. He filled up tape after tape, so where are all these other tapes? The story of how we got the tapes we have is complicated. Some were brought back to the US by his friends. Some were released on bootlegs before they got an official release. But many more are rumored to exist. These tapes are said to contain dozens of unreleased performances. Elvis singing more pop standards, more gospel hymns, more rhythm and blues. There are rumors of him attempting classical arias for fun. Rumors of him writing his own songs, something he almost never did publicly. One of the biggest mysteries is a tape that reportedly features Elvis singing with a young woman named Nancy Holloway. She was an American jazz singer performing in Europe at the time. The story goes that they met and recorded some duets at his home. Holloway herself has confirmed this in interviews. She said they sang several songs together. This recording has never surfaced. A duet between Elvis and a talented jazz singer, recorded in an informal setting, would be a stunning find. The search for the lost German tapes has been a long one. Collectors have spent fortunes chasing down leads. The problem is that these were private tapes. They weren't logged or cataloged. They were likely given away to friends left behind in Germany or simply taped over. When Elvis came home from the army, he was focused on his career. He may not have seen the value in keeping these casual home recordings. What songs did Elvis and Nancy Holloway sing together, and who has that tape now? How many hours of home recordings did Elvis actually make in Germany, and what percentage of that have we heard? Is it possible that some of these tapes are still in Germany in the attics of people who knew Elvis or his friends back then? Or did Elvis himself, upon returning to the US, listen to these lo-fi tapes and decide to destroy them, embarrassed by their unprofessional quality? Number 10. Where is the original, raw version of Tiger Man? In June 1968, Elvis filmed his legendary television special, often called the 68 Comeback Special. It was a huge moment for him. It revitalized his career and reminded the world that he was still a powerful, dynamic performer. The highlights of the special are the sit-down segments, where Elvis, dressed in black leather, jams with his original guitarist Scotty Moore and other musicians. He is raw, funny, and dangerous. It's pure rock and roll. During one of these sessions, he performed a blistering version of an old blues song called Tiger Man. The performance is incredible. It's aggressive, primal, and full of energy. It's one of the best moments in the show. The version we see in the special, however, is a composite. It's edited together from different takes, from different shows recorded on the same day. The producers, Steve Binder and Bones Howe, took the best parts of each performance to create the perfect version for television. But what about the original, unedited takes? Specifically, the very first time he performed it that day. Musicians who were there describe it as an explosion. They had been playing some of his older, tamer hits. Then, suddenly, Elvis launched into Tiger Man. The band was caught off guard. The audience was stunned. It was a moment of pure, spontaneous combustion. Bones Howe, the musical producer, has talked about this in interviews. He said that first take was the most electrifying of them all. He claims he kept the tape rolling. So where is that complete, unedited first take? Over the years, RCA and the Elvis estate have released a huge amount of material from the 68 special sessions. We have hours of outtakes, rehearsals, and alternate versions. We have the complete unedited recordings of the sit-down shows. But the legendary first take of Tiger Man, the one that supposedly blew the roof off the studio, has never been specifically identified or released in its entirety. It's possible that it's buried within the released material, mislabeled, or part of a longer unedited tape segment. It's also possible that Bones Howe's memory is romanticizing the event. Maybe the first take wasn't as perfect as he remembers. But the persistence of the story suggests there's something to it. The idea that there is a version of Tiger Man that is even more raw and powerful than the one we know is tantalizing for fans. It would be the sound of Elvis rediscovering his own power in real time. The mystery is a subtle one. It's not about a lost song, but a lost moment. A specific performance that captured a turning point. The tapes exist, we have them, but do we have that take? The one that started it all? The search is not for a lost reel of tape in a vault, but for a specific 3 minutes of magic on a tape that we may already possess, but have not yet recognized. Did the producer simply record over this initial take when Elvis did the song again later? Is it possible that the legendary first take is actually the one we hear in the show, just edited down from its original longer form? Could Steve Binder or Bones Howe have a private copy of this performance that they've never shared? Or has this single performance taken on a mythical quality that no real recording could ever live up to? Number 9, what happened to the Loving You session acetates? In early 1957, Elvis was in Hollywood recording the soundtrack for his second movie, Loving You. This was a crucial time. He was the biggest star in the world, and the pressure was on to deliver another hit movie and another hit soundtrack. The sessions took place at Radio Recorders, a legendary Hollywood studio. He recorded classic songs like Let Me Be Your Teddy Bear, Loving You, and the rock and roll anthem Got a Lot o' Livin' to Do. During these sessions, the normal procedure was to record the songs on tape and then cut acetate discs from the tapes. These acetates were used for various purposes. Some were sent to the movie studio for review. Some were given to Elvis and the Colonel to listen to. Some were used for reference by the record label. These were not the final mastered versions. They were often rough mixes, sometimes with studio chatter or alternate vocals. They are a snapshot of the creative process. Many acetates from Elvis's career have survived. They are highly sought after by collectors, but a large number of the acetates from the Loving You sessions are missing. We know they were created. There are studio documents that refer to them, but their whereabouts are unknown. This is particularly frustrating because the Loving You sessions were incredibly creative. Elvis was working with a great band, including Scotty Moore and Bill Black. They were experimenting with the sound, trying different arrangements. One of the most legendary lost acetates from these sessions is for the song Mean Woman Blues. The version released on the album is a classic, but there are rumors of a much faster, more aggressive version that was recorded. This version was supposedly so wild that RCA deemed it unreleasable. An acetate of this take was reportedly made, but it has never surfaced. If it exists, it would be a holy grail for collectors of 50s rock and roll. So what happened to these discs? The answer is likely a combination of things. Acetates are fragile, they degrade over time, many were probably thrown away after they had served their purpose. They were seen as disposable work parts, not historical artifacts. Others may have been taken home by studio employees, musicians, or movie executives. If so, they could be sitting in someone's private collection, their importance unrecognized. The loss of these acetates is a loss of information. They could contain alternate lyrics, different guitar solos, or even completely different vocal performances. They could give us a clearer picture of how these classic songs were built, layer by layer. Without them, we only have the final polished product. We are missing the rough sketches that led to the masterpiece. The search for the Loving You acetates is a search for the secret history of one of Elvis's best soundtracks. Could a complete set of these acetates have been stored together and simply lost or destroyed in one single event? Are there studio logs that list every acetate that was cut and who it was given to? Is it possible that the wild, unreleasable version of Mean Woman Blues is just a myth, born from a musician's exaggerated memory of a good session? Or is some collector out there sitting on a disc that would rewrite a small piece of rock and roll history? Number 8, why was the duet with Anne Margaret buried? In 1963, Elvis starred in the movie Viva Las Vegas alongside Anne Margaret. Their chemistry on screen was electric. It was so powerful that it sparked rumors of a real-life affair. It also translated into their musical performances. They recorded several duets for the movie. One of them, The Lady Loves Me, is a fun, flirty number that showcases their amazing chemistry. But for some reason, it was cut from the movie, and it wasn't officially released on an album until 1983, long after Elvis's death. But The Lady Loves Me might not be the whole story. There is a persistent rumor that Elvis and Anne Margaret recorded another, much more serious and passionate duet. The song was supposedly Let It Be Me, a beautiful ballad made famous by the Everly Brothers. The story goes that they recorded it privately, not for the movie soundtrack. It was just for them. A recording of this duet would be incredible. Two of the most charismatic performers of the era singing one of the great love songs. The evidence for this recording is thin. It comes mostly from third-hand accounts and rumors that have circulated for decades. Anne Margaret herself has been very private about her relationship with Elvis. She has never confirmed or denied the existence of such a recording, but the rumor persists because it makes so much sense. Given their connection and their shared love of music, it's easy to imagine them slipping into a studio to record a song that had personal meaning for them. If the tape exists, its suppression is easier to understand. Colonel Tom Parker was famously jealous of anyone who shared the spotlight with Elvis. He saw Anne Margaret as a threat. He may have seen a passionate duet as something that would fuel the rumors of an affair and take the focus off Elvis. He may have ordered the tape to be destroyed or locked away. It's also possible that Elvis or Anne Margaret themselves wanted to keep it private, a memento of their time together. The delayed release of The Lady Loves Me shows how the politics of Elvis's career could affect his music. A great performance was kept in the vault for 20 years for reasons that were likely more about business and control than about art. It's not a stretch to think that a more personal, intimate recording could have been buried even deeper, perhaps forever. The Let It Be Me duet is a ghost in the Elvis catalog, a recording that exists more in the imagination of fans than in any confirmed reality. But it's a powerful ghost because it represents a side of Elvis we rarely saw: a collaborative artist and a man in love. Could the tape of Let It Be Me be in Anne Margaret's private collection? Did Colonel Parker take the tape and destroy it to protect his client's image? Is it possible the recording session was never documented and the tape is sitting in an archive, completely unidentified? Or is the entire story a romantic fantasy, a myth created by fans who wanted the on-screen chemistry between Elvis and Anne Margaret to be even more real? Number 7, are there more tapes from the 1955 Louisiana Hayride? Before he was a national star, Elvis was a regional sensation on the Louisiana Hayride, a popular live country music radio show broadcast from Shreveport, Louisiana. He performed on the show regularly from 1954 to 1956. These performances were crucial to his early career. They were where he honed his stage presence and built his first fan base. The Hayride was his training ground. Many of Elvis's Hayride performances were recorded. Over the years, a good number of them have been discovered and released. They are raw, energetic, and historically important. They capture Elvis just as he is exploding into fame. You can hear the audience screaming. You can hear the pure, unadulterated energy of early rock and roll being born. The sound quality is often poor, taken from fragile transcription discs or old radio broadcasts. But their power is undeniable. The mystery is not that these recordings exist, but how many of them are still missing. Elvis performed on the Hayride dozens of times. We only have recordings from a fraction of those shows. The show's archives were not well maintained. Many of the original transcription discs were lost, damaged in a fire, or recorded over. What was on those lost discs? We know from newspaper ads and promotional materials that Elvis performed songs on the Hayride that we have no live recordings of from that era. Songs like I Forgot to Remember to Forget and Mystery Train. A live recording of him singing Mystery Train in 1955 with that original raw energy would be a major find. There are also reports that he tried out new songs on the Hayride audience before he ever recorded them at Sun Studio. These performances would be a priceless insight into his development as an artist. The search for the lost Hayride tapes is a form of audio archaeology. It involves digging through the archives of old radio stations, contacting the families of former Hayride employees, and chasing down rumors of private collectors who might have recorded the shows off the radio. Every few years, a new, previously unknown Hayride recording seems to surface, giving fans hope that there is more out there. These are not just missing songs, they are missing pieces of the origin story. The Hayride was where Elvis, Scotty, and Bill became a unit. It's where they learned to deal with frantic crowds. It's where the legend began. Every lost performance is a lost chapter of that story. The surviving recordings are like a few random pages torn from a book. We can get the gist of the story, but we don't have the whole thing. How many of the Hayride transcription discs were actually destroyed, and how many were simply taken or sold off over the years? Could a large collection of these discs be sitting in a single private collection somewhere? Are there undiscovered recordings from the Hayride that were made not by the radio station, but by audience members with their own home recorders? And what would a live 1955 performance of a song like Heartbreak Hotel sound like months before he recorded it for RCA? Number 6, what was on the stolen tapes from the 1974 tours? By 1974, Elvis was a touring machine. He was playing sold-out shows in arenas across the country. His live show was a huge production with a full orchestra and backup singers. RCA recorded many of these shows, often using a mobile recording truck. They would record several shows on a tour and then cherry pick the best performances for a live album, like the classic Elvis recorded live on stage in Memphis. These professional recordings were made on multi-track tapes. This means each instrument and vocal was on a separate track, allowing for a clean, powerful mix. These are the master tapes. But there was another type of recording made at these shows' soundboards. A soundboard recording is a direct feed from the mixing desk used by the sound engineer in the arena. It's a simple stereo mix made in real time during the show. The quality can be excellent, often better than an audience recording. They're often made for reference or for the musicians to listen to after the show. In 1974, a number of these soundboard tapes were stolen. We don't know the exact circumstances. They may have been stolen from the sound engineer, from a backstage area, or from a vehicle. What we do know is that they quickly made their way into the bootleg market. Over the years, dozens of bootleg albums have been released featuring soundboard recordings from the 1974 tours. The quality is often fantastic. They offer a raw, unedited look at the Elvis show, warts and all. You can hear him talking to the band, making jokes, and sometimes struggling with a song. They are an unfiltered historical record. The mysteries about the tapes that were stolen but have never been released. The bootleggers who got their hands on these tapes released a lot of material, but it's widely believed that they held some back. They may be holding on to the best quality tapes or the shows with the most interesting performances, saving them for a future release or a private sale. There are rumors of soundboard recordings from legendary 1974 concerts, like those at the LA Forum, that are in the hands of a few select collectors and have never been circulated. The Elvis estate and RCA have a complicated relationship with these stolen tapes. For years, they ignored them. Then, through the Follow That Dream label, they started officially releasing some of them, trying to beat the bootleggers at their own game. They have put out many fantastic soundboard recordings, but even they can only release what they can find. They can't release a tape that is locked away in a private vault. The stolen soundboards of 1974 are a fascinating part of the Elvis story. They represent a loss of control for the normally iron-fisted management of Elvis. They opened a window into his live show that was never meant to be opened, and they created a tantalizing mystery. What gems are still on the unreleased tapes? A one-time only performance of a rare song. A particularly emotional monologue. A perfect, flawless show that blows all the others away. We may never know. Who originally stole the tapes, and did they sell them all off or keep some for themselves? How many shows were recorded on soundboard in 1974, and what percentage of those tapes are still considered missing? Is it possible that the bootleggers themselves don't know what's on all the tapes, and some remain unplayed and uncatalogued? Or have the best of the stolen tapes simply degraded over time, their magnetic signals fading into silence? Number 5, what else was recorded at the Jungle Room? In February and October of 1976, RCA brought a mobile recording studio to Graceland. They set it up in Elvis's den, a room famous for its Polynesian-themed decor, green shag carpets, and an indoor waterfall. It was known as the Jungle Room. Elvis was unwell and was reluctant to travel to a studio. So the studio came to him. These would be his last major recording sessions. The music he made in the Jungle Room was remarkable. He was in poor health, but his voice was still magnificent. He sang with a depth of emotion that was heartbreaking. The sessions produced his final 2 studio albums, From Elvis Presley Boulevard, Memphis, Tennessee, and Moody Blue. The songs were a mix of country, ballads, and blues. Classics like Hurt, Moody Blue, and Way Down were recorded there. For years, that was the story. We had the albums and a few outtakes. It was assumed that we had everything from these final sessions. But in the late 1990s, the Elvis estate decided to go back to the original multi-track tapes from the Jungle Room. What they found was astonishing. The engineers at the time had not just recorded the formal takes. They had let the tapes roll between songs. They had captured hours of Elvis just sitting at the piano singing and playing for himself and the band. These newly discovered recordings were a revelation. They were released on an album called The Jungle Room Sessions. Here was Elvis raw and unfiltered, singing blues songs, old gospel hymns, and just fooling around. The sound was intimate and immediate. You felt like you were in the room with him. It was a stunning, posthumous gift to his fans. It also raised a tantalizing question: is there more? The engineers, like Felton Jarvis, were working under difficult circumstances. Elvis's moods were unpredictable. They recorded a huge amount of tape. The process of logging and archiving these tapes may not have been perfect. Is it possible that there are more reels of tape from the Jungle Room that were mislabeled or set aside? Tapes that contain even more of these informal jams. People who were at the sessions have talked about songs that were attempted but never finished, or long meandering blues jams that went on for 20 minutes. The released material from the Jungle Room Sessions is heavily edited. We hear snippets of these jams, but rarely the full performance. The full unedited tapes from those nights in 1976 could hold even more treasures. They are a record of a man's last creative burst, singing his heart out in the comfort of his own home. We have a lot of it, but the possibility that we don't have all of it is a powerful one. Could there be a complete undiscovered reel of tape containing only these informal piano jams? Were there any songs that Elvis recorded a full, professional quality take of that were simply forgotten and never mixed down from the multi-tracks? Is it possible that some of the tapes were taken from Graceland after the sessions and never returned to RCA? Or have we truly heard all the worthwhile material, and anything that remains is just noise and false starts? Number 4. Did Elvis record a secret album in his final year? By 1977, Elvis was in a steep decline. His health was failing. His live shows were often erratic. He was clearly a man in pain. He was scheduled to go to Nashville in January to record a new album, but he never showed up. RCA was desperate for new material. They had a contract to fulfill. The producer, Felton Jarvis, came up with a plan. He would take the mobile studio out on the road and record Elvis live in concert. This seemed like the only way to get a new album. They recorded several shows in the spring of 1977. The results were mixed. Elvis's voice was still powerful on some nights, but his performances could be weak. And Jarvis managed to patch together an album, Muddy Blue, by combining a few of the best live tracks with the remaining songs from the 1976 Jungle Room Sessions. It would be the last album released in Elvis's lifetime, but there is a persistent rumor of another secret recording project from that final year. The story goes that Elvis, unhappy with his live performances and feeling the pressure from RCA, set up his own private recording equipment. Some versions of the story say he set it up in a small room at Graceland. Others say it was at a friend's house or even in a small local studio he rented secretly. Here, away from the pressure and the entourage, he began to record. What was he recording? According to the legend, it was just him and a piano or an acoustic guitar. He was recording the songs that meant the most to him. Gospel hymns, heartbreaking ballads, songs about regret and redemption. He was pouring out his soul onto tape. This was not for RCA. This was not for the fans. This was for him. It was his final musical statement made in private. This is a powerful and romantic story, but is there any evidence for it? There is no official documentation, no studio logs, no paperwork. The evidence is purely anecdotal. It comes from secondhand stories, from people who claim to have known someone who was there. One of the main sources of the rumor is the world of Elvis impersonators, some of whom have claimed to have heard these tapes. If these tapes exist, they would be the most important and revealing recordings of Elvis's entire career. They would be his Black Star, his American recordings, a final, stripped-down testament from a dying artist. The fact that they have never surfaced only adds to the myth. Where could they be? If they were made at Graceland, they could still be hidden there. If they were made at a friend's house, they could be in that family's possession. The story of the Final Testament tapes is probably the most controversial of all the lost Elvis recordings. Many serious researchers and historians dismiss it as pure fantasy, a comforting myth that fans created to give Elvis a more dignified musical ending. But the story refuses to die. It taps into a deep desire to believe that even at his lowest point, the music was still there, pure and true, waiting to be heard. What specific songs are rumored to be on these final tapes? If they exist, who has them, and why have they kept them secret for so long? Is it possible the recordings were of such poor quality or so emotionally raw that Elvis himself ordered them to be destroyed? Or is this entire story a hoax, a piece of modern folklore with no basis in reality at all? Number 3, where's the complete $1 million quartet session? We return to December 4th, 1956. Sun Studio, Elvis, Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins, Johnny Cash. The $1 Million Quartet. The tapes from this session are legendary. We have about 40 minutes of music that has been officially released. It's a fly-on-the-wall recording of a magical, once-in-a-lifetime moment. We hear them singing gospel songs, country hits, and early rock and roll. We hear them joking and talking. It is a priceless historical document, but it is not complete. The engineer, Jack Clement, remembered that he started the tape machine after the jam session had already begun. How much did he miss? No one knows. He also said that the tape ran out at one point. He had to find a new reel of tape. During that time, the jam continued unrecorded. Again, how much was lost? And the session didn't end when the released recordings end. It went on. By all accounts, the entire jam session lasted for several hours. We only have a small fraction of it on tape. What's on the missing parts? Eyewitnesses, including Johnny Cash and Carl Perkins, have talked about songs they sang that are not on the released tapes. They reportedly sang more serious country and gospel songs. They also dove deeper into rock and roll. There are stories of them doing blistering versions of Chuck Berry and Little Richard songs. The release tape is wonderful, but it is relatively tame. The missing sections are said to be where the real fire was. The biggest question is about the tape itself. The original tape that Jack Clement recorded on has never been found. The recordings we have come from a copy that Sam Phillips had made for Elvis. If Phillips gave the original tape to Elvis, what did Elvis do with it? Did he listen to it and then misplace it? Is it sitting in the Graceland archives in a box marked with something else? Or is it gone forever? It's also possible that more than one copy was made. Could Sam Phillips have kept a copy for himself? Could Jack Clement have made a copy? The original tape, or a more complete copy of it, could contain much more music than the version we know. It might contain the beginning of the session. It might contain the parts that were recorded on the second reel of tape. Finding that original tape is one of the ultimate goals for Elvis researchers. The $1 Million Quartet session is a perfect example of a recording that is both found and lost. We have enough of it to know how special it was, but we also know that we are missing a huge part of the story. The tantalizing possibility is that the best parts are still out there, unheard, on a reel of tape that has been sitting on a shelf somewhere for over 60 years. Why did Sam Phillips give the original master tape to Elvis, a highly unusual move for a record label owner? If the tape is at Graceland, why hasn't it been found during the extensive archival work that has been done there? Is it possible that the session was not as long as people remember, and the released recording is actually most of what was captured on tape? Or is there a second, even more legendary tape from a $1 billion quartet session where Roy Orbison also joined in, as some rumors claim? Number 2, what happened to the dozens of unreleased American Sound Studio songs? In January and February of 1969, Elvis walked into American Sound Studio in Memphis. He hadn't recorded in his hometown for 14 years. He was coming off the success of the '68 comeback special, and he was ready to make real music again. He was working with a new producer, Chip Smoman, and a legendary house band, the Memphis Boys. The sessions were magical. The chemistry was instant. In just a few weeks, Elvis recorded some of the best music of his career. These sessions produced the classic album From Elvis in Memphis, one of the greatest albums ever made. They also produced a string of massive hit singles, Suspicious Minds, In the Ghetto, Don't Cry Daddy, and Kentucky Rain. The amount of high-quality material that came out of these sessions was staggering. In total, over 30 songs were officially released, but they recorded far more than that. The tapes were rolling almost constantly for 2 weeks. Elvis and the band would jam on songs, try out ideas, and work through arrangements. They recorded full, multi-track versions of dozens of other songs that were never finished or released. We know this from session logs, from interviews with the musicians, and from the few outtakes that have trickled out over the years. What kind of songs? A huge variety. They reportedly cut versions of Neil Diamond's Sweet Caroline, the Beatles' Hey Jude, and Lady Madonna. There are rumors of a powerful version of the Percy Sledge ballad, When a Man Loves a Woman. And the Memphis Boys were a versatile band, and Elvis was in a creative mood. He was willing to try anything. He was reclaiming his title as the king. So where are these recordings? This is one of the most frustrating mysteries in the Elvis world. The multi-track master tapes from the American sound sessions are missing, all of them. The albums and singles we have were mixed down from these masters in 1969 and 1970. After that, the master tapes vanished. Neither RCA nor the Elvis estate has them. Chips Moman doesn't have them. Their location is completely unknown. This is a catastrophic loss. These are not just rough demos or soundboards. These are professional 8-track and 16-track master tapes of Elvis Presley at his absolute peak. With these tapes, you could remix the classic albums, you could isolate Elvis's vocals, and most importantly, you could finish and mix the dozens of unreleased songs that are sitting on those reels. You know, it would be like discovering a whole new Elvis album from his best period. You know, the theories about what happened to the tapes are all over the map. Some think they were lost in a fire or a flood. Some think they were stolen. There's a complex legal battle between Chips Moman and the Elvis estate over ownership of the sessions, and some believe the tapes are being held by someone as leverage. Whatever the reason, their absence is a gaping hole in Elvis's recorded legacy. The American sound sessions were a renaissance for Elvis. The lost tapes are the lost art of that renaissance. Could the tapes be in a bank vault somewhere, part of the ongoing legal dispute? Did Chips Moman hide them away decades ago and has since forgotten where they are? Is it possible they were simply thrown out by a careless RCA employee who didn't realize their value? Or could a private collector have bought them in a secret deal, condemning them to a life of silence? Number 1 are the 1955 home recordings reel. In 1955, Elvis Presley was on the verge of becoming the most famous person in the world. He was still with Sun Records. Heartbreak Hotel was just around the corner. He was a regional star, touring constantly, playing small towns across the South. He had just bought his first house on Audubon Drive in Memphis. He was a young man with a new house and a little bit of money. It was a time of innocence and possibility. According to a persistent and detailed legend, during this year, a friend of Elvis's brought a semi-professional tape recorder to the house on Audubon Drive. And for one or more afternoons, Elvis, alone with his acoustic guitar, sat down and recorded a series of songs. These were not for Sun Records. They were not for anyone, really. It was just Elvis playing the songs he loved, the music he grew up on. Country songs by Hank Williams and Eddie Arnold. Blues songs by Arthur Big Boy Crudup. Gospel hymns he sang with his mother. The story goes on. He filled up at least one reel of tape. The recordings are said to be clear and intimate, just his voice and his guitar. A pure, unadorned document of his musical soul just before the storm of fame hit. He reportedly gave this tape to a friend for safekeeping, and then it disappeared. This is the number 1 lost recording for a reason. If it exists, it is the Rosetta Stone of Elvis's music. The German home tapes are from when he was already a star. The early Sun acetates were made in a studio. The 1955 home recordings, if real, would be something else entirely. They would be the direct link between his influences and his art. We could hear, in the clearest possible way, how he took all these different styles of music and made them his own. The evidence for these tapes is tantalizing but unproven. It comes from accounts of early friends and girlfriends of Elvis. You know, people who were around him in 1955. Their stories have been repeated in books and documentaries for years. The details are often consistent. The location is always the Audubon Drive house. The format is always a reel-to-reel tape. The content is always Elvis, alone with his guitar. No one has ever produced the tape. No one has ever heard it. Many believe it is a myth, a beautiful story that's too good to be true, but others believe fervently that it is out there, that someone somewhere has a small reel of tape that contains the most important unreleased recording in the history of popular music. It's a recording that would not just give us new Elvis songs, it would give us a deeper understanding of who he was as an artist and as a young man before the world claimed him. It would be the sound of his heart. If the tape was given to a friend, who was that friend, and what happened to their possessions after they died? Could the tape be in the hands of a family that has no idea what it is, perhaps labeled simply Elvis 1955? Is it possible the story is true, but that Elvis himself in later years reacquired the tape and destroyed it, wanting to keep that private part of his life private? Or is this the ultimate Elvis myth, a collective wish for one last perfect message from the past?